Tonight, 8 new representatives will be sworn into the 18th Legislative Assembly. Election petition filed by Berfa Lisimoni Tongahai. And updates on the Niue Road upgrade project. Good evening, I'm Sarai Mangawa, and this is your BCN News. Leading our news tonight, an extended coverage of the general elections. 8 new representatives will be sworn in at the opening of the 18th Legislative Assembly. Of the new members, 6 are women, the highest ever number of women elected to the Whanokepule. Free women voted in from the Common Roll and the Free Women Village representatives, including the youngest member of Parliament, the representative for Lakapa, 34-year-old Rhonda Siakia Tomailunga. Here's Esther Pavihi with more on this story.
879 ballot papers were issued on Saturday, with 838 valid ballot papers returned. 28 invalid votes were counted, with 13 spoiled ballots in the overall general elections count on Saturday. We begin our story with the village representatives. 8 villages went to the polls to choose their representatives and voted in new members, including the youngest member and woman representative for the village of Lakapa, Rhonda Siakia Tomailunga, who defeated her contender Shield Utalo Palaitungia 35 votes to 16, with 1 invalid vote for Lakapa. 3 other newcomers to the Whanokepule after the elections on Saturday, including the new representative for the village of Higutavake, Ian Hipa, won by 1 vote in the 3-way race against long-serving member Opili Talafasi, 9 votes for Hipa and 8 votes for Talafasi, and the other contender, Masini Holo, with 5 votes. There were 2 invalid votes for Higutavake. Liku's new representative is Longopasi Seumanu, who polled 31 votes against contender Sionetasi Puletoa with 26 votes. There were no invalid votes from Liku. Tutuli Haka is the new representative for the village of Alofi North, who won another 3-way race with 35 votes against Alentano Puliosi 26 votes and Stanley Tafatu with 17 votes. There were 2 invalid votes from Alofi North. Maureen Milegitama has reclaimed her seat that she lost after a hat draw back in 2020 when she and Makayuani were tied for the seat for the village of Mutalau. On Saturday night, Milegitama received 29 votes to Makayuani's 18 votes. There were 2 invalid votes for Mutalau. Incumbent Tofua Puletama from the village of Makefu retained his seat, winning 22 to 14 votes for his to his contender Sionetali Lolani for the seat of Makefu. There were no invalid votes for Makefu. Peter Vaunofisi will return as the representative of Avaseli, winning 28 votes in a 3-way race against Hetutu Tama Hetutu, who lost by just 2 votes, 26, and Ketilingi Feresi with 13 votes. There were 2 invalid votes from Avaseli. Tamakotonga showed their confidence in their incumbent Riki Muyaki Makani, voting him back in with 46 votes against Peter Andrew Funaki, 25. Tamakotonga had the most invalid votes with 5. These 8 representatives will join the uncontested seats of Alofi South with Premier Dalton Tangilangi, Vaya with Delaisi Tamatalaisi, Hakupu with Richie Mautama, Toi with Dion Pakitaufitu, Tuapa with Minister Asa Mona Ainu, and the new representative for the village of Namukulu in Sione Tuato. For the Common Roll, caretaker Minister Crosley Tatui from Hakupu topped the Common Roll polls this time with 409 votes, followed by newcomer Imani Fogosimanawa Lui from Alofi North in second place with 394. In third place is another newcomer in lawyer Sinhamana Heko from Alofi South with 387 votes. In fourth place is former Minister Billy Graham Tahalangi from Avaseli with 366 votes. And another former minister and incumbent Common Roll member, Olaf Jacobson, retaining her seat fifth place with 364 votes. And in sixth place, according to the official results issued on Monday the 1st of May, Sonia Tahalangi is duly elected as the sixth Common Roll member with 362 votes.
But the elections did not go without drama, with the Common Roll results issued by the Chief Electoral Officer Darren Tovaka challenged in a legal petition filed by one of the candidates, Berfa Lisimoni Tongahai, who on Saturday night was announced as ranking 6th in a tie with Sonia Tahalangi. But after a recount done by the Chief Electoral Officer, Darren Tohovaka, and his team on Monday, that result changed with Lisimoni Tongahai losing 4 votes and dropped in ranking from 6th equal to 7th. The final results were issued after 6 p.m. on Monday, 1st of May, announcing the 6 common role members elect Crossley Tatui, Emanif Gosi Manavalui, Sinahemana Hiko, Billy Graham Talangi, Olive Jacobson, and Sonia Talangi. As this bulletin is recorded after 3 p.m. this afternoon, the court-ordered recount was still in session, so we do not have any information as to the outcome of the recount. But here is Esther Pavihi with the story about the legal petition.
On Tuesday afternoon, Berfa Lisimoni Tongahai filed a petition to the High Court seeking a recount of the votes from the villages of Mutalau, Hikutavake and Tuapa. The petition by Lisimoni Tongahai alleged that the Chief Electoral Officer, Darren Tohovaka, did not comply with Section 66 of the Assembly Act in that he did not make arrangements for a scrutiny of the results or give notice in writing to the candidates to have a scrutineer present at the recount, and that she was not given the opportunity to organize for a scrutineer. The Chief Justice Craig Cogshead in his instructions called for a recount of the ballot papers, which took place today at the government building at Fonuakula at 1 p.m, witnessed by appointed scrutineers. As this bulletin is recorded, we have yet to receive the outcome of the recount, which started at 1 p.m. this afternoon.
2 long-serving politicians, between the two of them, served the island at the Fonoikepule for nearly 70 years. Long-serving Common Role member Terry Coe lost his seat on Saturday after 30 years as a representative for the people. The long-serving representative for the village of Hikutavake, Opili Talafasi, also lost his seat on Saturday after 36 years in the Fonoikepule.
The former school principal, Terry Coe, was elected to the Fonoikepule as a Common Role member in 1993, and he was straight away appointed a cabinet minister in the Frank Fukushima-Navalui government, where he served as Minister of Finance, Telecom and Public Works, among other portfolios, until 1999. Since 1999, Terry Coe has been in opposition and for many years was the sole voice from the opposition. On Saturday, Terry Coe lost his seat on the Common Roll, coming in at number 8 with 340 votes. Coe is one of the most vibrant and passionate representatives of the people, whose voice is always heard in every Fonoikepule, a voice that will be missed after 30 years of service for the people. Opili Talafasi was elected to the Fonoikepule in 1990 and is one of the few members of parliament to have worked with all 7 premiers of Niue since 1974 self-government, having served as the representative for the village of Hikutavake for 36 years. The seat of Hikutavake has been for the most part one of the most contested seats, which led to a draw of a hat in one election, but Talafasi held strong and continued to represent his village. On Saturday, though, he lost his seat by 1 vote to Ian Hipa in a 3-way race between Talafasi, Hipa and Langalonga. Both Opili Talafasi and Honourable Terry Coe are commended for their many years of service to the island. We wish them well in their retirement.
For the rest of the results of the Common Role candidates, ranking 8th is Terry Coe with a total number of 340 votes, which makes up 30.4% of the votes. Coming in 9th from Hakupu is Fapoya Kesi with a total of 312 votes, and ranking 10th is Tamuta Utalo with 233 votes. Here's more on this story.
Ranking in 11th place is Tongia Sioniholo from Alofi with 212 votes. Coming in 12th rank is Victoria Pusimani Kaloni from Tuapa with 191 votes. In the 13th place is Julie Tahalangi Funaki with 188 votes. Eti Pasene Miziepo also ranked 14 with 183 votes, and in 15th is Charlie Tohovaka from Makefu with a total of 165 votes. Coming in at 16th place is Mark Blumsky with 158 votes, and in 17th place is Fisa Pingia with 107 votes.
While it may seem a smooth running of the general elections last Saturday, the final results issued on Monday by the Chief Electoral Officer showed huge variations from the provisional results the people heard on Saturday night. The final results impacted on the placements and count mainly of the common role candidates, with around 13 variations, and affected the placements of 4 candidates. Here's more on this story.
The results also changed the ranking for Eti Pasene Misiapo, who dropped in ranking from 14th to 13th, while Julie Talangi Funaki improved her ranking from 14th to 13th because 10 votes were added on to Julie Talangi Funaki from the village of Makefu that were not included in the provisional count on Saturday night. BCN News has analysed the provisional results from Saturday and the final results issued on Monday and found that the variations were mostly from the villages of Tuapa, Higutavake, Mutalau, Lakapa and Makefu. 8 candidates lost at least 1 vote from the village of Tuapa, Whapoia Kesi e Manifikosi Manavalui, Sinhemana Hikau, Berfa Lisimoni Tongahai, Billy Talangi, Sonia Talangi and Crosley Tatui lost 1 vote each from Tuapa, while Fisapingia lost 2. 5 candidates lost votes from the village of Higutavake at the final count. Sinheman Heko and Eti Pasene Misiapo both lost 2 votes, while Terry Ko, Imani Fkosmanavalui and Tongia Sioniholo all lost 1 vote from Higutavake. 4 candidates lost votes from the village of Mutalau. Berfa Lisimoni Tongahai lost 2 votes, while Sonia Talangi, Imani Fkosmanavalui and Terry Ko lost 1 vote from Mutalau after the final count. For the village of Lakapa, Tungia Sioniholo gained 5 votes after final count on Monday, but his ranking remained at 11th on the common roll ranking. Julie Talangi Funaki gained 10 votes at the final count on Monday from the village of Makefu, which changed her ranking from 14th to 13th. I asked the Chief Electoral Officer Darren Tovaka if these changes is a reflection on the need for more training for the polling officials, especially the role of returning officers, to which he said that there is always room for improvement.
I want to acknowledge also that as with anything, there's always room for improvement, and we acknowledge that certainly with going forward we can look at those issues around the counting of the votes and making sure that the votes are as accurate as possible. Human error will come in, I acknowledge that, and it's not anything new. It's happened in our elections over the many years, and certainly I think we can look at that going forward and how we can improve the way that we do our processes with elections. But these are the officers that we've chosen. We have confidence in them, we trust them, and it's important that the people trust in the processes to ensure that our elections are fair and democratic, and people look at them as being the accurate results possible through the existing laws that we have.
There were also concerns as to the late announcement of the provisional result on Saturday night, with the public waiting up until after 10 p.m. for the common roll results from 2 villages, Alofi South and Higutavake. We spoke with the Chief Electoral Officer Darren Tovaka on Tuesday this week about these concerns.
I'd like to firstly acknowledge that the last village to come in is the biggest village in our country. There's 276 voters in Alofi South. I think our focus on Saturday was always that, yes, we were concerned a little bit about the time, but I think the main issue was ensuring that the count was accurate and was correct. And might have been a little bit of inconvenience for people waiting, but I think that getting the count right in that major village is the village with the most voters in our country is important. And I just wanted to also explain, in 2020 there were 4 officials who worked in 2020 general elections, and they were able to assist, and that's why we were able to get the results quicker. There were only 2 in these elections, so it's a very big and daunting task, and I have worked there myself personally over many years ago. And so it's difficult, and I understand that there were some anxious voters outside tooting horns and things like that, but I'm very grateful to our officers that they were able to do that, even if it was late getting the results back. And I can confirm that after our count yesterday, that all of the Alofi South votes were correct as from the provisional results on Saturday. So even if it did take longer, we can see that it paid off in the long run in terms of that the votes counted were correct from the provisional results.
The major infrastructure road upgrade project that will improve the roads from Hikutavake heading south along the west coast to Avasele and east to Hakupu has already started with the preparation of the roads. BCN News was invited along to the site inspection this morning. Our senior reporter Esther Pavihi went along with the team.
Clinton Chapman, the Director of Utilities, along with two of the Niue Government Utilities team, led the site visit with contractor First Railway China today.
Well, we are working now on multiple fronts in different areas. So at this stage, the China contractor is starting with the clearing of the roadside verges. So that's all it is. So we've done the road from Kaimisi to Hakupu. And also from there to Toa, and also tomorrow they'll start clearing the verges of the road from Kaimisi down to the hospital. So they'll just clear the sides of the road. We just ask the public not to be too concerned. There'll be no major works happening at those sites right now. Also, this allows them to peg out the centre line for the road, and also allows all the utilities, telecom, power and water, to find their services before they start digging the drainage that each of these areas will have on the side of the road. So today, as you've seen in our site visit, we're doing the road from the quarry to Homofisi in Tamakotong.
Chapman explained that it was important to take the contractor to explain to them some of the areas with cultural significance and discuss how to avoid any major disruption to these areas. For example, if there are graves located within the government's 10-metre road easement, then meetings will have to take place between the landowners, the village council and the project.
So the government legal road easement is 10 metres in width in total. So us pegging the centre line first allows us to measure the 5 metres from there to each side, and then as you've seen today we picked up some grave sites along the way, and with the language barriers that we have with the Chinese contractor, we just need to maintain our communications, not just with the contractor, but we also work with the village councils to let us know where those choke points are. So if a grave, for example, is within the 5 metre from the middle of the road, then we talk to the landowners, and wherever we can, we divert the work around those features. Not just graves, but also coconut trees and large trees. The Chinese will mark those trees with a red ribbon, and then we will consult the village councils and eventually the landowners themselves.
Chapman said that the road work program is set up in a way to minimise traffic disruptions, which is why they have decided to start work in the outer villages and work towards Alofi.
Around the Kaimisi area, we have essential services up there. We have Telecom Niue, we have the hospital in particular. So we have options there. We will leave the diversion roads, for example, from Tuila. And that's one of the reasons we've started with the one from Kaimisi to Larukafika. So that will become a diversion road for people coming from Hakupu, for example. When we get to the tighter spots, like within the villages, the contractor will work on one side and we just manage the traffic. We will have a traffic management in place so that traffic will still be allowed to go through. And wherever there is land that could be given towards the project, we can put a diversion temporary road around the works themselves.
The wet weather has affected their schedule because the quarry is not operational in wet weather and delaying some parts of the preparatory work. The contractor is expecting the asphalt and the sealing heavy machinery to arrive in July, but in the meantime, they are working on clearing and preparing the roads.
The Environment Department, on behalf of the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environment Program, known as SPREP, hosted a workshop yesterday based under the climate change thematic area. Taking place at the Scenic Matavai Conference Room, the workshop saw representatives from government departments, civil society, private sector, and community organizations. Here's more on this story. A team from SPREP in partnership with One Crop arrived on the island earlier this week to assist the Niue government in the preparations for global climate change negotiations heading into Dubai for COP28 at the end of this year. They are also here to advance the role of the Pacific political champion for gender, social inclusion and climate change. BCN News spoke with SPREP chairperson Mrs. Tangaloa Cooper yesterday, who shared more about SPREP's team mission to Niue.
What we're doing here in Niue is unpacking what COP27 was, what happened, what impacts on Niue, what Niue followed, and what needs to be done in the lead up to COP28 going forward. I would like to see coming out of this a deeper understanding of what the COP is, what it takes to be involved, and how much work goes into it, because it's not one of those meetings that you just up and go. It takes a lot of preparation. And I also, one of my expectations leaving Niue is that we have a clear understanding and a pathway forward of how CROP, all young other organizations including SPREP, can be of better assistance to Niue and provide more effective support to Niue.
The Niue delegation who attended COP27 also presented their learnings and outcomes from the conference. The team of 7, including Minister of Natural Resources Honourable Mona Inu, represented 4 thematic priorities, including gender, loss and damage, climate finance and adaptation. BCN News was able to speak to Felicia Talangi, who represented the climate finance thematic priority for Niue's delegation at COP27.
I follow climate finance. I always like to follow money because a lot of our priorities in Niue, we need the financial resources to be able to implement a lot of those activities. So COP, Conference of the Parties, this is where a lot of the developed nations will put up their money, and COP is also where policies are developed, the governance framework for the different funding mechanisms are developed. So being at the table to let the different partners know what our constraints are in Niue is an important part of it, because we can tell the donors that it's awesome that they're putting out a lot of these money. They're putting out billions of dollars for climate change, adaptation, and also mitigation. But a lot of the issues for us in the Pacific is accessing these resources. So being at the table, we can tell them that they need to provide simplified processes for us to access these financial resources.
SPREP is working with the Niue government and stakeholders this week in preparation for COP28 to be held in Dubai at the end of this year. Niue Tourism has recently welcomed on board Sarah Porter as the new specialist agent based in New Zealand. Sarah, along with her husband Hayden Porter, who was also recently welcomed to Niue Tourism as a consultant, are no new faces to the island. They will be working with Niue Tourism in the next couple of years as Niue resets post-COVID and welcomes more tourists to the island. Sarah and Hayden Porter are no new faces to the island. They lived in Niue for several years with their 2 children back in 2010. Sarah was the manager for the Swanson supermarket and Hayden the director of Niue Tourism. Earlier this week, BCN News had the chance to speak with Sarah. Full of pride and optimism for Niue, Sarah says that Niue is her favorite place in the world.
This whole island is one resort. So we have to work as a team, all the operators working together and making sure that we give our tourists. Years ago, I remember Micah and the tourism team and Hayden that set up the phrase, arrive as a visitor, leave as a friend. And I think it's so true. Like, there's so many wonderful people here and you just see people, and that's what I miss. Back in New Zealand, you just don't see people, you're so busy. So as a tourist coming here, they just get that sense of familiarity. And when they go to leave, I'm confident that they're always thinking about their next trip. So my role is to sell Niue once. Your job is to make sure they have a wonderful time here and they'll be back.
Niue is also represented in the Australia market as she works to prepare Niue for the tourist season. As the island merges to a post-COVID reset phase, Sarah is excited to be representing Niue in the tourism industry abroad. The director of the Niue Meteorological Services, Mrs. Rosie Misiepo, earlier this week has announced the end of the Niue tropical cyclone season, which started in November last year until the 30th of April this year. Mrs. Misiepo thanked the public for taking heed of the advice from her department, but she cautioned that even though the season has ended, cyclones, although rare, can still occur outside of the season. Here's more on this story. According to the Director of Met Services, Rosie Misiepo, the ENSO, or the El Nino Southern Oscillation status, is currently neutral. This means we are neither an El Nino nor La Nina. However, there are signs El Nino may form later in the year with below normal rainfall, dry conditions, or drought for Niue. High risk of tropical cyclones or intense cyclones can also be expected during that time. Met Director Rosie Misiepo says that in order to plan ahead, preparation needs to begin now for dry conditions and cyclone season and to strengthen current cyclone plans. And that concludes our news bulletin for tonight. Join us again next week for more of our local news. I'm Soraya Mangawa. Have a good night.